contrarian views. There are some who still believe that in their lifetime this business will not go away. And that's a fair point. Again, so you will see the consistent view is that this industry needs to change. You cannot survive on putting people in airports and ports, teaching people about valuation, commodities, and slabs. That will just have to go away because that is available electronically to a customer. Therefore, what should you think about? Couple of questions which you really need to ask yourself honestly. First, what business are you in? There's a very famous example in the early 1900s in the US. There were large railroad companies who defined their mission statements as, we are in the railroad business. And then soon there were aircraft and they realized that they're losing share. And there were highways built and they were losing share to road as well. And then they decided to reword their mission as being in the transportation business. So are you really in the customs clearance business or are you in the logistics business? Are you there to solve all of a customers' problems or just customs clearance? Because today no customer wants to have 20, 30 different vendors. They have it because they don't have too many people doing everything, but 5, 10 years down the line, it will be a very different scenario. Second, what differentiates you from your competition? Is it price? Is it your knowledge of regulations? Is it the jugaad that you apply in getting paperwork moving? Is it the deep customer relationships? Litmus test. If you increase your price 5% to a customer, will that relationship stand the test of price? And value curve. What really do you offer versus what do you price for it? Third question, have you thought about the impact that IT will have on your business? IT has been a game changer in something related to what you do, which is income tax. You earlier used to have income tax filing officers. You still have them who come to your house to help you file income tax returns. Now, if you ask that group what happened to their business, margins have dropped because now you can go online and file your income tax returns with all the assistance for as little as 100 rupees. It's happened to brokers for air tickets, travel agents. It's moved online. They've all shut shop. So think about the impact that something which can go into a wire can have on your business. Next question, what additional services can you offer to your customers to stay in the game and win? Think of yourselves as advisors. What do you really know about your customers? You know what he moves, where he moves from, and can you take that knowledge to advise him on his supply chain? What to move? Can you tell him, I don't think this commodity that you're moving is right. I think I can get you something cheaper from these 3 locations. Think about that. So move to an advisor role and not an implementer role, because implementation is always fraught with price risk. New services, both within your current business, including on-site audits and valuation, which is within the customs brokerage business, and integrated logistics and supply chain businesses. Today you have a lot of customs brokers who are also freight forwarders, who are also transporters, also warehousing solution providers, 3PLs, and that's basically happened because the customer wants one neck to catch when something goes wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya. Some realistic perspectives, relevant questions, and some wonderful insights for all of us through that presentation. Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Mr. Yashodhan Parande, the Member Authority for Advanced Ruling, our keynote speaker, to present the keynote address on the Customs Law on Advanced Rulings. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Yashodhan Parande.
this?
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be with all of you. I see a lot of familiar faces. And it's really very nice to see some of the venerable faces from your industry in the audience. So I thank FFFAI for giving me this opportunity of making a short presentation on the Authority for Advanced Ruling, which is, I'm a member in that authority in my present incarnation. And one of the things that has sort of intrigued me for quite some time now as to why is it that this authority is not widely known and is not getting too many applications from the customs, excise or service tax side. There's a fair number of applications which come in on the income tax side. So only two possibilities are there, only two possible explanations. One is that people don't know about it enough. The other one perhaps could be a more cheerful explanation, that is that there aren't too many problems. That's something that I would like to believe, but I'm not too sure. So let me try to present before you the regime of advanced rulings in India, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that might follow. To begin with, I would like to start by saying that when we talk about the regime of advanced rulings, one needs to approach it slightly differently from a normal dispute resolution mechanism. We do not resolve disputes between the government and the taxpayer. What we do is to prevent those disputes from arising. So there are various flavors of advanced ruling in different tax administrations. There are administrations which make advanced ruling a core part of their own business, in the sense that the customs administration there itself gives this as one of their taxpayer services. It's internal to the customs organization. There are many others where they give advices, they don't give rulings. So by and large, even if it's called an advice, the administration abides by that advice as long as it's not terribly wrong. But in India, we have chosen a slightly different approach. We have set up an independent authority, and that authority gives binding ruling. So this is the substance of advanced ruling in India. What the authority does is to give a binding ruling in the context of the stated facts on a proposed activity. So the first point is that you can approach us only at the stage at which your activity is a proposed activity. In other words, you cannot come to us in respect of an ongoing business. There is a little sort of complexity in that aspect which I'll come to in the course of my presentation. But the intention is to give certainty to the taxpayer in the matter of his tax liability. This is an instrument that can be used also by the prospective investors. I mean, if your investment decision is significantly impacted by the tax rate that is applicable to you, then you can take a call on that investment if, on the basis of a ruling from the Authority for Advanced Ruling. These were the objectives when it was set up. It was set up actually in, I think, 99, 2000. So at the time that it was set up, the main idea was to have in place this mechanism to attract FDI. And of course, the other things, as I said, to impart certainty to the taxpayer. Bear in mind, this is a service which is directed to an individual taxpayer. And to reduce litigation by preventing litigation from arising, and to do this expeditiously. The Act says that the authority should pronounce ordinarily its ruling on a question within 90 days, though it's not always been possible for us to abide by that time limit. And internationally, this is also a part of the Kyoto Convention. This is one of the standards that the Kyoto Convention lays down. So this is the short history. As I said, it was set up in 2000, in 99-2000. And these are the provisions of the respective act. I'm going to leave the presentation here so that I don't have to spend too much time on the statutory provisions. This is the composition of the authority, and a word may be added at this moment. As I said, the regime of advance rulings internationally comes in different flavors. In India, we have chosen to elevate it to a fairly high level. Under the Act, only a retired Supreme Court judge can be a chairman of the authority. And there are two members, one being from the Customs Service, the other from the legal field. And the officer who joins from the Customs side is required to retire from service. Now, the idea was that, given our context, for this authority to inspire trust and confidence in people, it had to be very independent of the government. So, the members of this authority have no link with the government in that sense. What do we give rulings on? This is the scope of the authority. We basically, all core processes of customs, excise, service tax are covered by the scope of the authority. You can seek a ruling on classification. You can seek a ruling on the applicable rate of duty, the question whether a particular notification is applicable to you or not. You can seek a ruling on principles of valuation, and also on the question of origin of goods. And it's not only duties under Customs Act, but also duties under Customs Tariff Act that come within its ambit, which means that the other duties, additional duty, anti-dumping duties, all these are covered by this authority. Similar in excise and service tax, I don't need to go into that. Of course, in the present context, the first one has become a little out of date. Now that we have moved into a negative list regime, classification of services is not very important now. Now, who are eligible to apply? Initially, we started by making this available only to foreign companies or joint ventures. But now, this is available to almost all companies, including domestic companies, if they are public limited companies. So, these are the eligible persons. Public sector corporations, then private industry also, companies which are public limited companies can apply. And there are, of course, in customs, certain treaties also are covered. Now, there was a problem in this. I said that ongoing business cannot apply to us. A question arose, what was meant by an ongoing business? You might be, let's say, an importer of software. You decide to start importing hardware. The question is, yours is an ongoing business. Will you be eligible to apply? In one case, the authority answered it in the negative. So that has now been changed by a statutory amendment, and in the latest budget, the government has changed the definition of activity. See, the Act prescribes that any person proposing to undertake an activity can apply to us. An activity in customs context has been defined as import or export of goods. Question is whether, if you have imported one laptop, have you already become an importer or exporter of goods for the purposes of this Customs Act? That is the question. There was some dispute on that score, and therefore the definition of activity has been amended in this year's Finance Act, which specifically states that when you start a new line of business, you are eligible. So if you are, let's say, an importer of furniture, if you wish to diversify and get into import of computers, whatever, you can come to the authority for a ruling on the question of classification, valuation, or whatever the question that you wish to get a ruling on. Same applies to manufacturers also. If you start a new manufacture of new goods, you can come to us for ruling. I think I'll go now a bit on how do you approach us. If you see the Act and rules and regulations made under that Act, there are a set of forms. The procedure is pretty simple. All you need to do is fill up that form and pay a fee of only 2,500 rupees and apply to us. Then your application will be scrutinized and comments will be called from the concerned commissioner. And generally, within 2 hearings of a case, a ruling is pronounced. So, but there are certain conditions. If a case relating to the same question is pending in a court, and I mean a case in respect of the applicant himself, not if some other party is in court, but if that very issue is pending before a customs officer or a tribunal or a court, then you cannot come to the AAR. The reason is simple. This is not a substitute for normal dispute resolution mechanism. Similarly, if the question decided, or question on which you are seeking a ruling, is already decided by a court or a tribunal, again that is a bar. But of course, whether the facts of your case are covered by that court's decision is something which is open. So you could apply to the authority if the facts are different, if your case can be distinguished from the court ruling. Then, as I said, this is directed towards the taxpayer. So the ruling that the authority issues is binding on the taxpayer as well as the government, and only in respect of the questions which are raised. In other words, the rulings given by the authority are not like court rulings which have precedential value. They may have persuasive value, so they can be cited before courts, etc., but they are not binding on anyone other than the party and on the government in respect of that party. So even if there is a ruling given by the authority which is in respect of, let's say, taxpayer A, you are taxpayer B, and your facts are identical, 100%. Still, that ruling will not apply to you. If you want to have certainty in your case, it will be better if you also apply for a ruling. And of course, they are valid, the rulings are valid so long as the law and the facts do not change. Similarly, if you misrepresent or do not furnish true facts, we have the power to recall that ruling and declare it void. And if a ruling is voided, then that period between the ruling and the date on which it has been voided, that will be excluded for the purpose of limitation under Customs Act. Rest of it are, I think, normal things. We function like a court. On any question that is before us, we hear the taxpayer, we hear the government, and pass rulings which are actually speaking orders. So for that purpose, the authority has the powers of a civil court. We can call witnesses, we can ask for documents under the Code of Civil Procedure Code, etc. And we regulate our own procedure. Once you have applied, then within 30 days you can withdraw the application. If it is beyond 30 days, then you need to apply to the authority for withdrawal. I think the rest of the things are normal. I'm going to skip through these slides of details. I'll just spend 2 minutes on what are the things that I have noticed, what are the shortcomings that I have noticed, and what are the key points that you need to keep in mind when you apply for an advance ruling. Most important, first and the most important point, state your facts absolutely clearly. Spare no detail. Because the quality of the ruling depends on the clarity of facts. So when you are seeking a ruling, your facts must be absolutely clear. And they must be stated in a manner which will enable the customs officer at a subsequent point to examine whether, the imports or exports that are happening on the basis of an advance ruling are strictly aligned with the facts that were stated before the authority. It's open to the customs officers to, come back to the authority where they find that the facts in the transaction are different from the facts which are stated in the ruling. So it's in your own interest that facts should be stated clearly. If you do not state facts clearly, we might come back to you asking clarifications, and that much time will be added to the disposal of the case. Second, make sure that the application is complete in all respects. And an important part of that is crystallize the question for ruling very clearly. Because the way the form is structured, it first asks you to give your corporate structure, etc., to establish your credentials as an eligible person to apply. Then it asks you to give the facts on which you are seeking a ruling. Then your own view of that facts in terms of law. So when you are seeking a ruling, you have to also indicate what is the correct position according to you. And finally, frame the questions very precisely. Because we will always answer a question in a ruling. The ruling is on a question that is posed before the authority. And a question that is not posed will not get an answer. So make sure that the questions are crystallized properly if you want to be absolutely sure that you get the correct ruling. And if the question is not framed properly, again, there might be delays in the disposal of cases. These are some of the common things that I read. These are the numbers, actually, which sort of, to back up what I said in the beginning, since the inception this authority, we have so far issued 96 rulings, which is quite a low number if you look at the increase in trade, if you look at the expansion of the jurisdiction of this authority. And as I said, this is basically an important component of the taxpayer services that the government gives. So it seems to me that there is probably underutilization of this mechanism in the industry. And you may consider, guiding your clients properly, that this is an option available to them where they want to be sure of, their tax liability. This is something that they can consider doing, particularly when now almost all the domestic companies, apart from foreign companies, JVs, etc., have been covered. Thank you. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we request you to connect with offline for any further questions. And on that note, once again, we are honored to have with us our chief guest for the inauguration of the business sessions, Mrs. Shobha Chari, who is a member, Personal and Vigilance. With a warm round of applause, please help me invite Mrs. Shobha Chari to present her address to the august gathering.
Mr. Shantanu Bhatkamkar, Mr. Y.J. Parande, Ms. Neetalal Butalia, other dignitaries on the dais, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I must thank FFFAI for inviting me here today to participate in the inauguration of the business session of the convention. As Mr. Parande said, it has also been my very pleasant experience to see a lot of familiar faces, and it has been an enjoyable morning so far. Customs brokers have been traditionally playing an important role as an intermediary between trade and the customs administrations. The theme of this convention is Customs Broker, New Paradigm, New Opportunities, New League. I think this theme indeed highlights the vast opportunities which have emerged in the logistics service sector all over the world. I thought in my address today I would touch on 3 points. One is the safe framework of the WCO. Secondly, a study by the World Bank of the logistics business. And thirdly, a new concept which I came across called green logistics. As most of you would be aware, the liberalization wave which has gone across the world has led to a real shift in governance, which has now become truly a multi-actor paradigm, where the government, the private sector, and civil society groups work together for achieving the common goals of our society. The robust growth of the world economy and global trade entails a massive increase in the demand for logistics, and in this area we find these different players coming together, and it is an area which has really many opportunities for achieving a great amount of growth and to contribute to the society at large. The WCO's Safe Framework of Standards is an international instrument designed to provide a safer world trading regime and new working methods for customs administrations. Pillar 2 of the WCO Safe Framework talks about customs to business partnership. It stipulates that each customs administration will establish a partnership with the private sector in order to involve it in ensuring the safety and security of the international trade supply chain, as well as its efficiency in reducing the costs for the participants. So this is something that will touch our lives, and we find examples of it in concepts like the authorized economic operator and so on, which I think Mr. Bhatkamper also mentioned. The Government of India is committed to implement the AEO program, and the customs brokers and freight forwarders have the resources to help the government implement this program. The second point that I would like to mention is that the World Bank has prepared a logistics performance index, which provides a comparative evaluation of 155 countries in 6 key areas of logistics performance. The key areas are customs clearance, infrastructure, ease of arranging competitively priced shipments, quality of logistics services, ability to track and